Canada's economy is on life support and country is in recession watch, says economist. Canada's economy is on life support. The nation is in a clear recession watch, and the Bank of Canada needs to cut interest rates further, says an economist. A new report from Rosenberg Research, Canadian Economy on Life Support, shows that despite interest rate cuts from a high of 5% in 2024, per capita GDP is still falling, and the economy is growing at only 1% annually. Moreover, the housing and manufacturing sectors are struggling, with home prices down 2% year over year. Manufacturing, which heavily relies on U.S. trade, is down 5%. It's clear to me, unless the policy lags are just a lot longer this time around, that this is what 275 basis points of Bank Canada rate cuts delivers, the grand total of 1% growth economy. David Rosenberg, chief economist and founder of Rosenberg Research, told BNN Bloomberg. The next question is that all you get? The report states that the economy is expected to shrink in the fourth quarter, falling by an annualized 0.5% quarter over quarter. This is lower than the Bank of Canada's forecast of 0.0%. Because the economy has contracted in 2 of the last 3 quarters, it is officially on recession watch for 2026, the report says. Inflation is not really an issue, Rosenberg said. The economy is growing below potential, and the Bank of Canada's own forecast is for the disinflationary output gap to persist until the end of 2027. Inflation in this country is not really an issue. Virtually every underlying inflation measure is comforted within the Bank of Canada's comfort zone, said Rosenberg. He believes the Bank of Canada will be compelled to cut rates further from its already egregiously low interest rate of 2.25%, and the Canadian dollar is going to come under some downward pressure. Residential construction, flat as a beaver tail. Monthly data shows Canada's GDP is running at roughly 1% in the fourth quarter. Rosenberg said while many economists seem to think fiscal stimulus will help the economy, slow growth in some sectors suggest otherwise. If you look over the past year, residential construction expenditures are flat as a beaver tail, said Rosenberg. He said the general consensus has been that the Bank of Canada's rate cuts would reignite rounds of housing inflation. None of that has happened. In fact, home prices in Canada nationwide have either been flat or negative sequentially for 10 months in a row and are running negative 2% year over year, said Rosenberg. Trade relations with the U.S. Up until recently, there was hope that Canada's relationship with the U.S. improves, said Rosenberg. We're going to throw that in the waste paper basket right now, he said. Even with a competitive exchange rate and red-hot U.S. economic growth, manufacturing is down 5%. When you adjust for whatever inflation there is at the retail level, there's practically no growth there either, said Rosenberg. You want to be bullish on the Canadian dollar, Rosenberg said. As weak as the Canadian dollar has been up until recently, it's probably not weak enough. You want to be bullish on the Canadian dollar, you have to start seeing real positive thrust in the areas of the economy that are most sensitive to the currency, said Rosenberg. It's just not happening, and that's a huge disappointment. Canada should compare its currency to Australia and New Zealand. The broad-based debasement trade in the US dollar directly affects Canadian currency, said Rosenberg. Canadians should measure their currency with the Australian dollar and the New Zealand dollar because those are our commodity-oriented brethren, he said. Compared to those currencies in the past 2 months, the Canadian dollar has already dropped more than 4%. It's telling you that they have higher interest rates because they have stronger internal demand, said Rosenberg. He said ultimately Canadians need to ask themselves if they believe Canada's interest rate hold is working. Why are the most credit-sensitive sectors like housing, construction, and retail trade stagnating or declining? That's telling me that as much as the BOC has done, they haven't done enough just yet, said Rosenberg.